All right, now I'm going to go into some of the therapy that I use when speaking with people who are going through gang stalking. And I deal with some pretty rough cases, and I don't even like to say cases because that doesn't feel right. People are more my friends than anything. Like when I talk to people, I get to know them, they get to know me. It's not a thing where I look at it as being just like, oh, this is somebody who I'm going to talk to for a brief period of time and give them some advice and this and that and never see them again. Like, these are people I'm hoping to speak to for the rest of my life. Like, that's just what, you know. All right, so one of the books that I read, and I stand by this book. I stand by this book. Right? Understanding Your Past, The Key to Your Future by Cecil G. Osborne. This is a real good book. It's an older book, and it's worn out, but it's a good book. And some of the concepts in the book: primal integration, a dynamic therapeutic breakthrough, the solution for emotional stress, faulty parenting, the main source of neurosis, how emotional symptoms develop, the obsessive compulsive phobic personality, anxiety and stress, depression, the drive for self-esteem, the misuse of aggression, questions and answers, people who got relief. Now, this book came out in 1980, and it was developed by some people in the San Francisco area, and it's a wonderful book. I love reading about therapeutic approaches that people came up with in the past. They're not watered down, and they're very, you know, oftentimes they were very experimental, but oftentimes they were very effective. Primal integration is a highly complex therapy. It should not be practiced by untrained persons. Its use is authorized only by persons trained by the Burlingame Counseling Center. Primal integration, a dynamic therapeutic breakthrough. I guess I'll read a little bit of it, and then we'll go into something. I got another something else I want to be going into. Primal integration, a dynamic therapeutic breakthrough. In this book, I am going to discuss emotional distress and how to relieve it. I will describe and illustrate a new technique which is light years ahead of standard talk therapy for people experiencing severe anxiety, depression, and many other emotional symptoms. To understand this dynamic new therapy, it is necessary to discuss the way in which the human personality is formed and how neurosis develops. We will also deal with the manner in which faulty parenting damages one's personality and how even loving parents can warp their children. We will see how all neurosis originates in childhood and the way anxiety and stress ultimately produce their progeny of physical ailments. But this is not a book which encourages people to hate their parents. The Bible tells us that all have sinned and all have fall short of the glory of God, Romans 3:23. It could be also said that all of us, our parents included, have not been sinned against and have been rendered less than whole persons. Now, at the beginning of the book, right there, when you come across that, the remainder of the book, it talks on and off about parenting, but that's not the main focus that I take when reading the book. I like to focus on how it teaches individuals to integrate portions of their mind and portions of their consciousness, things that they've left out at the door. And when you get into subjects like mind control, MK Ultra, and even with gang stalking, people have been traumatized and they leave portions out. That's how trauma-based mind control works. It fractures the person's overall psyche, their personality, and it compartmentalizes their mind so they don't know basically who they are. They fluctuate through multiple personalities. And so this book talks about bringing those together. Not that I really have a waiting list of people going through mind control that have been through MK Ultra experiments, but most of the people I speak to, they go through a lot of traumatic stuff by itself, just with the gang stalking, just with the constant stalking on the street level. And some of these people have been frightened out of their mind, especially when they didn't know what gang stalking was. And so just reading books like this and having this sort of insight really helps me to develop the sort of mindset that I need to approach the people and be able to help them, because there's only so much I can do just telling the person, you can beat gang stalking, go talk to the gang stalkers and get to know them, or listen to brainwave optimization. I have to have a little bit more insight than that, because if somebody calls me who's suicidal, or somebody calls me who has some sort of issue where they're going through economic cataclysm or whatever, it's just like any type of advice or any type of information I can have is going to be utilized to help the person. All knowledge is self-knowledge. So all the books I can get my hands on, all the information I can learn, ultimately it's going to be self-knowledge for me to do what I'm trying to do, to help others. So books like this really come in handy. This chapter is the solution for emotional distress. Okay. The book's falling. It's an older book and it's falling apart, but it's a good book, Yeah. I stand by this book. Alright, now I'm going to an article that's coming out in 1982, and it speaks about this gets into color perception, neuro-linguistic programming, behavioral science, and the effect that people, the effect that through auto-suggestion, repeatedly stalking somebody with the same color, multiple people stalking that person, what that does to that person, and how color plays a big influence in the destruction of the person's view of reality, or the alteration, there's just alteration of the person's view of reality. And we're going to get into how you can take these colors and redefine them, and you can change your mind and your perception, your reality, through changing your relationship with colors, right? Remember that. You have a relationship with colors, you have a relationship with people, you have a relationship with locations, you have a relationship with sound, you have a relationship with all these things in your environment, and gang stalking is a manipulation of that relationship. Like when I talked about my master mimic class, how you change the way they mimic you and you own that possession, you take ownership of that. You have to take ownership of multiple other things when you're being gang stalked, such as if you have fears, you have to take possession of those fears and say, this is my fear, I'm owning this fear. If you have a joy, you have to take possession of these things. I own this joy. You have to, they may be emotional or even metaphysical concepts, but you take ownership of them just like they're on the material plane. Now, I'm going to read this. This is from the archives, 1982. Color has a powerful effect on behavior, researchers assert. Okay. When children under detention at the San Bernardino County Probation Department in California become violent, they are put in an 8-by-4-foot cell with one distinctive feature. It is bubblegum pink. The children tend to relax, stop yelling, banging, and often fall asleep within 10 minutes, said Paul E. Boccumi. I don't want to pronounce his name improperly, but it sounds Boccumini, director of the clinical services for the department. This approach to calming manic and psychotic juveniles contrasts sharply with the use of brute force favored as little as 3 years ago. We used to have to literally sit on them, said Mr. Boccumini. I'll just go with that. A clinical psychologist. Now we put them in the pink room. It works. I want to stop right there for a moment. So he's dealing with manic and psychotic juveniles. Younger people who are juvenile delinquents, they're probably getting into fights, stealing cars. Some of them are probably, even killing people. And he's putting them in pink rooms, and it's calming their behavior down. When they get in there around the other juveniles, and they want to fight and act out, that's being diminished or all the way out taken away by putting them in this pink color room. That's fascinating. Behavioral change. Behavioral change. Not all psychologists are quite so sure. Many, to put it mildly, remain skeptical. Nonetheless, officials at an estimated 1,500 hospitals and correctional institutions across America have become sufficiently convinced of the pacifying effect of the bubblegum pink to color at least one room that shade. So some people aren't jumping on board, other people aren't jumping on board. Passive pink, as it is also called, is perhaps the most dramatic example, and certainly the most controversial, of many attempts to use light and color to affect health and behavior. Already, there are enough color schemes to spark nightmares about mind control, red to increase appetite, and table turnover in restaurants. Ultraviolet to reduce cavities and spur children's IQs, and blue to swell the ratio of female chinchilla babies to males. So the writer is very familiar with color perception. You hear him talking? You heard him say he interjected immediately with the concept of mind control too. And in industrial societies whose members spend more and more time in enclosed areas under artificial lights, any effect of color and light becomes important. And now that man is primed to build artificial habitats under the seas or in outer space, totally isolated from sunlight or totally exposed to it, the urgency of understanding the effect of artificial light can only become critical. As a result, the ancient and once discredited field of chromotherapy has been rejuvenated. Many scientists have become convinced that light has a far greater impact on health and behavior than previously thought. Chromotherapy is now called photobiology or color therapy to distinguish it from once popular work of Victorian Sparks. The once popular work of Victorian Sparks. Okay. It seems clear that light is the most important environmental input after food in controlling bodily function. Reported Richard J. Wertman, a nutritionist at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Several experiments have shown that different colors affect blood pressure, pulse, and respiration rates, as well as brain activity and biorhythms. As a result, colors are now used in the treatment of a variety of diseases. Within the past decade, for instance, baths of blue light have replaced blood transfusions as the standard treatment for about 3,000 premature babies born each year with potentially fatal neonatal Judas. I apologize if I pronounced that incorrectly. Further, because the blue light irritates nurses working in these wards, many hospitals have added gold lamps to soothe their staffs. Meanwhile, in England, London's Blackfriars Bridge was repainted blue in an attempt to reduce the number of people who commit suicide by jumping from it. The Soviet Union, one of the leaders in photobiology, showers coal miners with ultraviolet, which they believe prevents black lung disease, and supplements the fluorescent lights of schoolrooms with ultraviolet lamps. The result, said Faber Buren, a color consultant for industry, is that children grow faster than usual, workability and grades are improved, and I can't pronounce that. Catarrhal injections are fewer. I know I'm pronouncing that wrong. Mr. Buren has published hundreds of articles and books on color and is widely considered the most authoritative source on the subject. In the United States, ultraviolet has become a standard treatment for cirrhosis, I can't pronounce that either, and white fluorescent light in conjunction with photosensitizing drugs. It is widely used to help herpes sores. More controversially, several municipalities are experimenting with passive pink to stop graffiti, while football coaches try color in visitors' dressing rooms, hoping to debilitate their opponents. Though doctors and researchers may differ over how much is too much, They agree that some portions of the electromagnetic spectrum, such as X-rays, microwaves, and ultraviolet rays, have significant effects on health, but by and large, they reject such suggestions for visible light. For example, Richard Wiener, an environmental psychologist at the Polytechnic Institute of New York, said the claims made for passive pink were inflated. People love to see a magic bullet, he said. It strikes me as very unlikely that we'll find such a simple solution to very complex problems. In the real world, we usually find the magical is fantastical. Let me go down here a little bit. Some skepticism may be owing to the scars left by 19th century color healers who claim to cure everything from constipation to meningitis with glass filters. Nor has photobiology's roots in mysticism, which empowered color with symbolism and magic, added to its credibility. In addition, most color studies have been psychological, focusing on how light and color may affect behavior. Assertions about physiological effects have not, at least until recently, been based on strict scientifically designed research. Mr. Buren also asserts that the training of 20th century doctors make them favor pills and surgery and shots and prescriptions over such cures as color therapy. You know, that's fascinating. It's like they had everything they needed to go to. It's like the color therapy might even have been more effective than shots and prescriptions, pills and surgery, but for one reason or another, people have left the color therapy out to keep the drugs there, to keep the shots in. That's fascinating. That's really interesting. Many color therapists complain that their work is dismissed out of hand. John Ott, a retired banker and a leading photobiologist who directs the Environmental Health and Light Research Institute in Sarasota, Florida, said he has been called a crackpot for suggesting experiments on the relationship between color and behavior. Wow, that's pretty drastic to call him a crackpot for his research like that. Color therapists themselves disagree about why and how color acts as they believe it does. Mr. Buren, who has concentrated on the psychological effects of color, said he does not believe those effects are directly physiological. As designers and interior decorators have discovered, color sets a mood. This in turn, Mr. Buren said, affects health because as many as half of the modern man's diseases have been a psychosomatic component. But Alexander Schuss, a director of the American Institute for Biosocial Research, said color had a direct physiological impact. The electromagnetic energy of color, he said, interacts in some still unknown way with the pituitary and pineal glands and the hypothalamus deep in the brain. These organs regulate the endocrine system, which controls many basic body functions and emotional responses such as aggression. So these people are speaking about colors in general, like if you go to a school or you go to a hospital or you go to your workplace, what a painted color in a room can have such a great effect or such a horrible effect on somebody. But take that a step further and let's interject it with gang stalking. You're talking about swarms and dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of people aggressively and systematically, you know, with the use of technology, stalking somebody every single day, and noise campaigns, and you know, the use of light with brightening and gaslighting and all this stuff. You know what I mean? Like, if colors play such a big role on a small level like that, then what do they play on a gigantic role, like something like gang stalking, which is very sophisticated and very technological, and people like myself don't even understand. You know, I only understand it to a small degree just because it's been happening to me for 3 years. But you know, you can see how color this is much bigger. People who are being gang stalked, they don't know how serious this is. You know, color very definitely has a psychological effect, said Harold Wolfarth, who is president of the I'm going to write that down. German. I'm sorry, hold on a second. He is president of the German Academy of Color Science. I'm going to write that down, German. I never heard that before. Yeah, color science. Yeah, he did that. He's president. All right. President of the German Academy of Color Science and photobiologist at the University of Alberta. In an experiment at the Elves Memorial Child Development Center, a private school for handicapped children in Edmonton, Alberta, he found that light had an identical impact on blood pressure, pulse, and respiration rates of 2 blind children as on 7 students with normal sight. Wow! The light, hold up, 2 blind children. So people who can't even see are affected by light? Are affected by color? Is that what he said? Well, that's what he's saying. Color science. Light had an impact. Light. But he's talking about color at the same time. Light and color. Wow. Like the people who orchestrate this gang stalking behind the scenes don't know all this stuff, right? In the study reported in the International Journal of Biosocial Research, Volume 3, Number 1, the walls of the schoolroom were changed from orange to white to royal and light blue. A gray carpet was installed in place of an orange rug. Finally, the fluorescent lights and diffuser panels were replaced with full spectrum lighting. As a result, Professor Woolforth reported that children's mean systolic blood pressure dropped from 120 to 100, or nearly 17%. The children were better behaved and more attentive and less fidgety and aggressive, according to the teachers and independent observers. When the room was returned to its original design, however, the readings gradually increased and the children once again became rowdy, he said. Wow. See? Professor Woolworth said the minute the minute amounts of electromagnetic energy that compose light affect one or more of the brain's neurotransmitters, chemicals that carry messages from nerve to nerve and from nerve to muscle. Nerve experiments on rats and other small mammals already have provided evidence, he said, that light striking retina influences the pineal gland's synthesis, melatonin, and hormone that has been found to help determine the body's output of serotonin, a neurotransmitter. The precise role of the hormone, however, remains established. Okay, I'm going to leave. There's not much left here. I got to go. But I'm going to leave a link at the bottom to this page. And I encourage people to check it out. So this is sort of where my courses on gang stalking are going, where I'm starting to become more educated in the history, not just the use, but the history of light and colors and sounds and all that stuff. And so, all right, thank you for watching.